Today we're going to review the requirements to control hazardous energy while servicing or working on equipment. This is also referred to as lockout tagout. We have a lot of material to cover today. All of it is intended to keep you safe and out of harm's way while working on equipment. Lockout tagout is used to control all different types of energy that could cause injury to employees during servicing or maintenance associated with the equipment. Lockout tagout is technically known as the control of hazardous energy. There are many different types of hazardous energy sources, and all the sources of energy must be isolated during the lockout tagout process. Energy sources can include mechanical, hydraulic, chemical, pneumatic, electrical, thermal, and gravity. The lockout tagout procedure is critical to your safety and is probably the most important safety procedure we have. Across the U.S., it is estimated that 120 fatalities and 50,000 injuries take place annually from a failure to control hazardous energy. By using this training and the procedures we have in place, all injuries can be prevented. Fatalities due to the failure to control hazardous energy have occurred locally. This one described above pinned a worker in a conveyor that had lowered during a power down process when it had unexpectedly energized. Had the equipment been locked out, it would not have been capable of being lowered. This death was preventable by following proper lockout tagout procedures. In this fatality, the employee became entangled in the equipment he was repairing at a bowling alley. The longtime employee had probably done this repair many times before without locking out the equipment, but this time something unexpected happened. Never take chances with equipment. Performing lockout tagout procedures can prevent an injury from occurring or even save your life. Lockout tagout is required whenever you must put yourself into harm's way, whether that is installing new equipment or working on an existing piece of equipment. Servicing and maintenance activities may include construction of new equipment, installation and setup of new equipment, adjustment or maintenance of existing equipment, inspections, modifications, routine services, lubrication, and cleaning. Servicing and/or maintenance which takes place during normal production operations is covered only if the employees are required to remove or bypass a guard or other safety device, or place any part of their body in or near the machine's moving parts, or place any part of their bodies in the danger zone associated with the machine operation. An authorized employee is an employee who locks out or tags out machines or equipment to perform servicing or maintenance activities on that machine or equipment. Lockout tagout should only be performed by those who have been trained as authorized employees. Lockout tagout is used by these employees for their own protection. Authorized employees include employees who perform energy source isolation, implement lockout tagout on machines or equipment, dissipate potential or stored energy, verify energy isolation, implement actions to release lockout tagout, or test or position machines or equipment. An infected employee is an employee whose job duties require him or her to operate equipment or work in an area in which the energy control procedures are being implemented and servicing or maintenance operations are performed. Affected employees may disable, shut down, or turn off equipment. However, they are not able to actively participate in lockout tagout. OSHA requires us to have a written energy control procedure detailed in our SOP 95. They also require us to conduct employee training, to conduct annual periodic inspections, and also we must have lockout tagout instructions developed for each piece of equipment, detailed in our SC 86s. Oerlikon has developed equipment-specific lockout tagout procedures for each piece of equipment. These procedures detail the scope, purpose, and technique that is needed to control the hazardous energy sources. At a minimum, these procedures must also include the following elements. 1. The specific intended use of the procedure. 2. The specific steps for shutting down, isolating, blocking, and securing machines or equipment to control hazardous energy. 3. The specific steps for the placement, removal, and transfer of lockout or tagout devices and the responsibility for them. And the specific requirements for testing a machine to verify equipment isolation. Similar pieces of equipment with the same or similar type of controls and which can be isolated using the same steps can be covered by a single procedure. For example, a single procedure may be used for a group of woodworking machines if the procedure has sufficient detail to allow effective isolation of the energy sources and safely return each of the machines to service. To assist with the development of equipment-specific procedures, a template SC86 is to be used. We have developed lockout-tagout procedures for individual pieces of equipment that tell you how many locks are needed and what needs to be locked out to allow you to safely work on the equipment. Pictures and text are included to identify the various lockout points, the energy source, and the magnitude of the energy. Locks and tags are used in our facility. The physical protection offered by using a lock, when supported by the information on a tag, provides the greatest assurance of employee protection from the release of hazardous energy. Lockout devices must meet the following criteria. They must be durable, standardized, substantial, and identifiable. Lockout devices must be durable enough to withstand conditions in the workplace. They must also be standardized within a department according to color, shape, or size. Tags must warn against hazardous conditions if the machine is energized and offer employees clear instructions such as do not start, do not open, do not close, do not energize, or do not operate. Devices must be substantial enough to minimize the likelihood of early or accidental removal. Other than using a key, employees must only be able to remove a lock by using excessive force, such as using bolt cutters. Tagout devices are prohibited in this facility as all our equipment is able to accept a lock. Locks should be labeled with the employee's name or be accompanied by a tag identifying who the lock belongs to. Tagout devices are only permitted when energy isolating devices are not capable of accepting a lock. Tagout devices are warning devices that do not provide the physical restraint on energy isolation devices as offered by a lockout device. As mentioned earlier, we do not allow tagout devices by themselves in this facility. However, the use of a tagout requires at least one additional safety measure, such as closure of a second inline valve, removal of a valve handle, removal of an additional isolation circuit element, i.e. a fuse, or opening an extra disconnect device. The pictures shown here show examples of lockout devices that can be added to equipment so locks can be placed to secure the equipment in an isolated state. There is a sequence that must be followed while conducting a lockout-tagout. First, you must prepare the equipment for shutdown. Then, you must shut the equipment down. Next is to isolate the equipment, followed by applying lockout devices. After that, you can release any stored energy. You will also want to verify the equipment is isolated. In order to remove and energize the equipment, you must release the lockout-tagout devices, inspect the equipment's work area, and locate all affected employees prior to energizing the equipment. Only authorized employees are allowed to conduct lockout-tagout. Authorized employees must be knowledgeable of the types and magnitude of energy involved, the hazards of the energy to be controlled, and the methods to control that energy. Before performing lockout-tagout, employees shall discuss any questionable identification of energy sources with their supervisor. Authorized employees must notify all affected employees before lockout devices are applied and after they are removed. Prior to conducting a lockout tagout, review the SE86 for that piece of equipment. Identify the types and magnitude of the energy and the methods to control that energy. Stop. The machine or equipment shall be turned off or shut down using the procedures established for the equipment. An orderly shutdown must be utilized to avoid any additional or increased hazards to the employee as a result of equipment de-energization. The equipment must be isolated. All energy isolation devices needed to control energy shall be physically located to isolate the machine or equipment from the energy sources. The use of push buttons, selector switches, or other circuit type devices as energy isolation devices is prohibited. Stored energy such as capacitors, springs, elevator machine members, rotating flywheels, hydraulic systems, and air, gas, steam, or water pressure must also be dissipated or restrained by methods such as grounding, blocking, repositioning, bleeding down, etc. Compressed air, hydraulic, or steam lines must be bled, drained, or cleaned out. Only power circuit devices are approved as energy isolation devices. The power circuit distributes power from the source or the main disconnect to the motor, the connected load. The control circuit controls the distribution of power through the use of motor controls, system interlock devices, on-off switches, or start and stop push buttons. The use of a control circuit device as a primary means of hazardous energy control does not adequately protect employees. Control circuit devices are vulnerable to hazards such as component failure, program errors, magnetic field interference, electronic surges, and improper use or maintenance. The next slide contains a diagram that illustrates why locking out control circuit devices will not prevent the motor from starting if voltage is present in the power circuit. Think of this as a light switch in your room. If you turn off the light switch, the electric going to the light itself is still live. There is a current still there. You have to go to the breaker, which is your power circuit, and turn off that breaker to stop the electrical flow to those lines and into the light bulb. So the light switch is your control circuit, and the breaker is your power circuit. Lockout devices shall be placed in a manner that will hold the energy isolating device in a safe or off position. Employees must not attempt to operate any switch, valve, or other energy isolating device when it is in the locked position. Each employee must apply their own personal lockout tagout device on the energy isolating device. Any stored energy must be dissipated after application of a device. All potential hazardous stored or residual energy shall be relieved, disconnected, restrained, or otherwise rendered safe. The most important step of any lockout tagout procedure is verification of isolation. Prior to starting work, employees shall verify that the machine has been shut down properly. All energy isolating devices were identified, located, and operated appropriately. The lockout devices have been attached to the energy isolating devices correctly, and that the stored energy has been rendered safe. A combination of visual inspections and physical tests are required for proper verification of isolation. Visual inspections verify that the correct devices have been locked out in the correct position. Use physical tests such as a deliberate attempt to start a piece of equipment for further verification. You may also use a voltage test instrument in certain situations. Voltage testing may be required to verify that the equipment has been de-energized. In these situations, maintenance employees and only those who have been authorized and qualified under OSHA and NFPA are allowed to perform this voltage testing. After you've completed the lockout procedure, a ready for service tag must be obtained from another authorized lockout tagout employee. Any authorized employee may issue a ready for service tag if they are not participating in the servicing of the equipment. The service tag will act as a verification that the lockout procedure has been successfully completed as depicted on the equipment's SC86 lockout tagout procedure. There are two exceptions for the ready to service tag: maintenance activities conducted by the maintenance department and during die changes conducted by job setters. All other activities must have a tag issued. The tag should be hung alongside one of the lockout tagout locks. Before lockout tagout devices are removed and energy is restored, each lockout device must be removed by the employee who applied the device. You must inspect the equipment to ensure that non-essential tools and materials have been removed and that the equipment components are operationally intact. Check the work area to ensure that all employees are safely positioned, and inform affected employees that lockout tagout devices have been removed and that energy will be restored. It is critical to make sure that the controls are in a safe, neutral, or an off position. This way, the equipment won't start up as soon as energy is restored. You are now ready to remove the lockout devices from the machine or equipment. Reverse the order of the lockout steps from the bottom to the top, starting from the last page of SC86. When you are finished, notify any affected employees that the equipment is ready for use. If lock control must be transferred to the next shift, notify the authorized employees that must hang their lock as yours is removed. When the individual who applied the lockout is not available to remove it, the device may be removed under direction of a supervisor. Removal may not be based on convenience and may not be done simply because the employee is not available at the lockout location but is still at the workplace. The lockout tagout device removal procedure shall include the following elements: verification by a supervisor that the authorized individual who applied the device is not at the facility. The supervisor will make all reasonable efforts to contact that individual. The supervisor will assure that affected individuals have knowledge of the removal before resuming work at the facility. When lockout devices must temporarily be removed for testing or positioning purposes, you must clear the machine of tools and materials, replace any removed or open guards, remove employees from the area, remove lockout tagout devices, then energize and proceed with testing or positioning. At that point, de-energize and reapply energy control devices in order to continue with the maintenance or servicing. During shift or personnel changes, there must be a transition period so that individuals may exchange their assigned energy control devices. The orderly transfer of devices between off-going and oncoming employees must ensure that there is no gap in coverage. Individuals shall be fully briefed in the scope and strategy of the work by those who are being relieved. Oerlikon and the contractors must inform each other of their respective lockout procedures. Contractors are permitted to use either their own lockout procedures or Oerlikon's energy control procedures, or a combination of the two, provided the resulting procedures meet the requirements of the lockout tagout standard. Oerlikon and the contractor also must ensure that its respective employees understand and comply with all requirements of the energy control procedure that will be used by the contractor. If the contractor has no documented energy control procedure, or if their procedure allows tagout in lieu of lockout tagout, they shall ensure that their personnel understand and comply with the procedures established in the Oerlikon lockout tagout program. When service is performed by a group, a procedure must be utilized that provides employee protection equivalent to a personal lockout tagout device. In a group lockout situation, there will be one primary authorized employee who will perform the lockout procedure and apply a multi-lock accepting device. Each authorized employee must verify that the required equipment has been properly locked out and then apply their locks to the multi-lock accepting device. At the end, each authorized employee shall be responsible for removing their own personal lockout from the multi-lock accepting device. After all other authorized employees have removed their lock, shall the primary authorized employee remove their locks. Only you may remove your own lock. No other employee shall be permitted to remove your lock, unless you are unavailable and the lockout-tagout removal procedure is followed. Periodic inspections must be performed at least annually to verify that lockout-tagout procedures and requirements are followed. The inspections are performed by an authorized employee other than the one using the procedure. This process is designed to correct identified deficiencies during the procedure being followed. The inspections must contain at least two components: a review of the lockout-tagout procedure and a review of each employee's responsibilities in the procedure being inspected. A periodic inspection is documented on Oerlikon's SH12 periodic inspection form. This form must include the following information: the machine or equipment on which the lockout procedure was used, the date of the inspection, the name of the employees included in the inspection, and the name of the person who performed the inspection. Thank you for completing this portion of the lockout-tagout training. Be sure to complete the associated quiz. A score of 80% or higher must be obtained in order to complete this training.